Hey, everybody, it's Jessica with Childcare Confidential. Thanks for joining us today. My amazing co host, Katie, is not with us today. She is doing amazing things in our school. And this is something that I'm pretty passionate about as a former soccer player back in my day. As you can tell, I got my USA soccer gear on today. Today, we are going to talk about how to coach like a World Cup coach. Because right now, as I'm recording this, the entire world is watching 8 teams fight, compete for only 4 spots in the World Cup semifinals. Billions of people, billions, that's with a B, are here. And here's the part that nobody is talking about yet. The United States, Mexico, and Canada are all 3 host countries. And they are all already out, eliminated on their own soil. I have my USA jersey on. However, USA did not play like USA should have played in their last game. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But they're all eliminated on their own soil in front of their own country, their own fans. And you know what that reminded me of? Every director I've ever coached who poured everything into their program and still got blindsided by a licensing visit, a teacher walkout, or a family pulling their kids with absolutely no notice. Home field advantage, it doesn't save you, but great leadership does. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're talking about what a World Cup coach can teach you about running your childcare program. And I promise you, by the end of this episode, you are going to look at your team, your hiring, and your own leadership completely different. So let's get into it. If you're new here, I want to welcome you and just tell you that this show is mainly for early childhood educators, directors, owners, and administrators who are done with the sugarcoating. We say things that everybody in the industry is thinking about, and nobody wants to say it out loud. So, this week, I could not help myself with everything going on with the World Cup, and I've been following the games. As a former soccer player, played for 12 years, this touches close to home for me. So it's happening right now, the World Cup, and it's right here in North America. The quarterfinals are this week. France and Morocco, Spain and Belgium, England and Norway, Argentina, Switzerland. The final is July 19th, and it's coming up. Maybe you're a soccer fan, or maybe you could care less about soccer. But you know what? It doesn't even matter because this episode isn't really just about soccer. It's about what happens when leadership gets tested on the biggest stage in the world and what that means for you, leading your program, in your building, and your team. I've got 5 lessons for you today. 5 things World Cup coaches do that childcare leaders really need to steal. So grab a coffee, grab a notebook, and let's dive in. First, recruit the badge, not just the boots. The number 1 lesson here is to recruit the badge, not the boots. Here's what I mean. When a national team coach picks a roster, they're not just picking the 26 most talented players in the country. How can they? They can't, because talent alone doesn't win tournaments. They're picking players who will run through a wall for the badge on the front of their jersey. Players who fit in their system. Players who everyone around them makes better. Now, let me ask you something. When was the last time you hired somebody because you were desperate? Listen, I have been there. Be honest, because I'm sure most of you have too, if not all of you. You had a classroom out of ratio. You had a teacher who quit on a Friday. And Monday morning, you hired the first warm body and clean background check that walked into your school. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it. Let's be honest. And how did that work out for you? Because I can tell you how it worked out for me. And that desperate hire cost me more than the empty position ever did. They positioned the culture in that classroom. Two of my good teachers started looking elsewhere. Parents noticed the energy change when they picked up their children. One bad fit doesn't just fill a hole, it actually will dig you a whole new, larger hole. A World Cup coach would rather leave a superstar at home than bring someone who disrupts their locker room. Oof. I mean, I have some amazing teachers and I love them dearly. But if they're going to disrupt my whole school, they can go home. We're talking about legendary players, household names in soccer who have been left off of those World Cup rosters because the coach knew that it wasn't the right fit. Ugh, that takes guts, to be honest. And it takes clarity about what your program actually stands for. So here's my challenge to you on this one. Before your next hire, write down 3 non negotiables that have nothing to do with their credentials, not the CDA, not the degree, not the years of experience, but their character traits, how they talk about children, how they talk about their last employer, whether they light up or shut down when you describe your hardest classroom. These skills can be trained, but the badge, the buy in, all of that can't. And let me get practical for just a minute because I know some of you are pulling into the parking lot right now going, okay, Jessica, whatever. How am I supposed to do that? Change your interview. Just change your interview. Most childcare centers interviews are resume read alongs. Hey, thanks for coming in. Let's pull up your resume and just kind of go through. Okay, yep. Everything that you said to me is exactly what lined up on your resume. If you even got a resume, because let's be honest, some people think that's not necessary anymore, which that's a whole nother topic. Tell me about your experience. Are you comfortable with infants? You're learning nothing from that interview. Of course they're comfortable with infants. They're applying for the infant position. At least I hope they're comfortable with infants or they shouldn't have even showed up to the interview. Let's try to ask some of these instead. How about tell me about a child who was hard to love and what did you do about it? Oof. That gets people thinking. And the answer tells you everything about their heart and their honesty. Are they blowing you a bunch of fluff? Have they pre-read all the interview questions and they're just ready to go with the next basic statement? Anyone who says every child is easy to love, they're lying. I'm sorry. Not every child is easy to love. Let's be real. Ask them, what did your last director do that drove you crazy? Then just be quiet and listen. If they trash their director for like 10 straight minutes, guess who's going to get trashed next? If they can name a frustration and show some grace about it, that shows real maturity that you can build on. Ask, Walk me through your worst day in a classroom. Not their best day, their worst. Because champions talk about their losses differently. You'll hear it in their responses. One more thing on this, the best hire I've ever made was somebody with less experience than the other three candidates that I interviewed. On paper, she was the weakest applicant in the pile. But when she toured the building, when she got down on the floor with the 2-year-olds without even being asked, and she asked me about my philosophy before I could even ask her about hers, well, 2 years later, she's one of my strongest teachers. And that's pretty amazing. Those are the people you want to find because the paper will tell you all about the boots they're wearing, but the floor is going to tell you about the badge they're carrying. Is it going to be for your team? And listen, again, I know some of you are thinking, I don't have the luxury to be picky. I just need somebody, anybody. And I hear you because the staffing crisis is real in any state that you look at. I've lived it as a multi site owner, and I'm sure many, many other owners have too. But here is the hard truth, hiring someone who drives out your good people, that's not solving your staffing problem. It's digging that hole deeper and multiplying it by 1,000. Desperation hiring feels like a solution sometimes, but it's actually a really high interest loan because you're going to be hiring again and it's going to be a lot harder the next time. Lesson number 2, bench depth wins tournaments. Every 4 years, the same thing happens. A star player gets injured in the group stage, and everybody writes the team off. Well, if they can't play, how are they going to win this game? And then there's a substitute, somebody most fans have probably never heard of, and they step up and become a legend. World Cup coaches don't build a starring 11 starting players. They build a squad, 26 players deep, because they know with absolute certainty that somebody is going to go down. Somebody's going to get hurt. A pulled hamstring, a red card, a suspension. It's just how it goes. Now, tell me that that does not sound familiar. Okay, here we go. It's 6:15 in the morning and your phone buzzes. Your lead pre-K teacher, who is amazing, has the flu. And your entire day, your entire plan, and maybe your entire week just collapsed like a house of cards. Why? Because your program has a starting lineup and no bench. Oof. And I know it is hard to be able to afford a bench right now in early childhood, but we have to do our best to make it happen. If one call out can wreck your ratios, your lunch breaks, raise your blood pressure, you don't have a staffing plan. You have a prayer and you're just hoping for the best. We have to plan for situations that are less than ideal because you know what? Every year, somebody is going to have the flu. And hopefully, it doesn't take out your whole week. So, what does bench depth look like in childcare? Let me give you 4 things on this. First, cross training. Every teacher should be able to step into at least one other classroom and not just survive, but actually run the classroom the way it's supposed to be. That means they know the routines, they know the kids' names, they know the allergy list and who can have what and where the extra clothes are. Do you have that in your school? Second, your floater, and I hate the word floater. We use team support people in our school as our language, but your team support person, your floater, your extra hands, your break teacher, they are not a luxury. I know the budget math is painful because I live it, and I live it in Indiana right now where we are struggling hard with what is happening in our state right now. But you know what? You have to make the math work. Somehow you've got to find a way because a float, team support person, all of that, they're not a luxury. A strong float person is the difference between a bad morning and a very bad month. If you can't afford a full-time float person, build a bench of substitutes who actually know your building. Look for the retired teacher, the part-timer, the stay-at-home mom, or maybe your best former staff person who left on good terms. I know that that has worked out for us in many different scenarios. And sometimes they even come back to the team as a star player. Third, develop your assistant teachers like they are going to be your future leads because they are. A World Cup coach is always developing the next generation while the current stars are on the field. If your assistant directors and assistant teachers are just extra hands, you're wasting your bench. Fourth, document, document, document. And I know we hear this all the time in our field because we do it with children assessments all the time. But you have to document your systems. It's so important. If the only place your opening routine exists is inside one person's head, you are one resignation letter away from mass chaos. Playbooks aren't corporate nonsense. They're how good teams survive injuries or somebody getting the flu. Let me tell you about the day that my bench saved my business. I had a school where 3 teachers went down in the same week. Stomach bug, some other sickness, who knows what. Most programs, that could shut down a classroom. They'd have to call the parents, lose revenue, and honestly, parents' trust. But we had spent the previous several months cross training. Every teacher had spent planned time in a second classroom, not thrown in during an emergency, but actual time in the classroom. Maybe it was in the afternoon when things were a little bit less chaotic, or in the morning when things were a little bit less chaotic, depending on how your school works. Every teacher had spent some time in a different classroom when things were calmer, per se. My assistant director had run the preschool room enough times that stepping in wasn't a crisis. It was just a Tuesday. My regular subs knew our building, they knew our routines, they knew the kids by name. And yeah, that week, it was hard. I was exhausted. They were exhausted. But you know what? Our families, they never felt it. Not one call home, not one classroom closed. And here's what nobody tells you that's also a retention strategy. Teachers stay at programs where a call out doesn't mean everyone else is going to get punished for it. And I'm going to be real with you. We have been there. My team would tell you in a heartbeat. We have been there where somebody calling out just really screws things up and it throws everybody's day off. And you can be like, hey, okay, be flexible, we got this, and as positive as you want. But when you have 12 activities planned for the 12 kids in your class and Joe Schmo comes in, it can throw off a teacher's day. When your people know the building can flex, they stop feeling guilty for being human. Guilt based staffing, where taking a sick day means that you've personally betrayed your coworkers, that's how you burn out an entire staff, one absence at a time. And like I said, I have been there. These are lessons that I have had to learn the hard way. So hopefully, we are saving you from some of that. Bench depth isn't just operational, it's cultural. Okay, so here's the mind shift that sometimes I have to remind myself about, especially when I'm looking at that budget. Stop asking, who do I need today? And start asking, who breaks my program if they leave tomorrow? And then build the backup plan for that person this month. Always have the backup plan. Number 3, the manager sets the temperature. Oof. And yes, we do have managers in our school, but hopefully you have actual leaders in leadership and not just people who are telling people what to do. But for this part, we're going to talk about the manager because, it relates a little closer to soccer. But lesson number 3, the manager sets the temperature. Watch the sidelines in a soccer game during a knockout match sometimes. There has been some really close matches. I mean, we get down to the seconds and they're having to put 11 more minutes on the clock. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't watch the ball, but watch the coach. You've seen them if you've watched the games. They're arm in arm. They're ready to cheer. They're nervous as all get out because, they've worked so hard for this one thing. When it's 90 minutes of pressure, when the whole country is watching, when the call goes against them, the players look at the sideline. And whatever they see on that coach's face, that's what spreads through the team in about 10 seconds. Because remember, they're out there playing the game. They're out there running for 90 minutes, ready to pass out. Sometimes I know I would be at this day and age. I don't know how it happened when I was younger, but panic is contagious. If everything is blown way out of proportion, what do you think is going to happen to your team? You know what else is contagious? Calm, positive. Now, directors, owners, I need you to hear me on this because this might be the most important 5 minutes of this episode. Your team reads you the second you walk in that building. Before you even say a single word, they read your face at the drop-off chaos. They read your shoulders when licensing walks in unannounced. They read your tone in your staff group chat or messages. You, as an owner, as a leader in your building, as a director, whatever role you're in, you are the thermostat, not the thermometer. A thermometer reflects the temperature of the room. A thermostat sets the temperature. Again, I learned this the hard way. Years ago in one of my schools, we had a genuinely awful, awful week. A staff had an argument with another staff member. A family filed a complaint. There was drama everywhere, and I let my stress leak out everywhere. I was short in the hallways. I shot off quick, clipped one-line emails. I didn't say good morning, skipped classroom walkthroughs because you know what? I was too busy. I had a job to get done, and all of that seemed to be in my way. Oof. It's even hard to like say out loud now, but I've been there and within days, just days, not even a whole week, my whole building felt tense. Teachers were snapping at each other, telling them they're not doing it right, not explaining it well. Kids feel it too because children are emotional sponges. And you guys know that when you have a teacher who comes in stressed out. I know I have before. I've had to pull them aside and say, hey, they're like going to eat you alive today if you can't get it back to like a positive energy because they feel that. Children feel that. Well, the building definitely caught my tense fever that week. And the fix was not another policy, even though I would love to tell you that it was because I love a good policy and organization, but it wasn't. The fix was me. So here are the 3 thermostat habits to steal from the sideline. 1, have a game face routine. Before you walk into your building, sit in your car for 60 seconds. Decide who you're going to be today. Not fake, decide. There's a difference between suppressing your stress and choosing not to hand it on to your team. Do that mental check before you even walk in to the school or onto the field. 2, in a crisis, lower your voice and slow your pace. When everything speeds up, the leader slows down. The coach who's screaming at the 4th official in a soccer game is not leading. They're leaking. They're leaking that tension all out onto the field, onto their team. So 3, narrate the calm. When something goes sideways, say out loud, okay, we have handled harder things than this. Here's what we're going to do first. And if you haven't handled harder things than that, call your colleague in the field and walk through it together. Narrate the calm because your team doesn't need you to have all the answers all the time or even in that exact moment. But they do need to know that somebody is steering the ship and listening. Your building will never be calmer than you are. Let me say that again, because I think it's something that as a leader, we need to remind ourselves of over and over and over. Your building, your school will never be calmer than you. Keep that in mind when you walk into your building. And let me paint this picture for you because we have all lived it if you have worked in early childhood long enough. Licensing walks in unannounced on the morning that everything else has already went sideways. It's just how it works out. I don't know why. It's like God testing us a little bit further or something. I don't know. But it happens all the time. You've got a sub in the toddler room, breakfast is running late, and somebody's crying in the hallway. Might be a child, might be a teacher, who knows? It could be both, to be honest, some days. Thermometer directors' faces go white. They become pale. She starts speed walking, whisper barking corrections at the staff as she passes through the classrooms. And within 4 minutes, every teacher in that school is performing instead of teaching. Licensing sees a building that's scared, and scared buildings make big mistakes. And you're doing that right in front of the person that's writing your report about your licensing walkthrough. Oof. I know I've been there. Have you? How'd it help you? Kinda sank me a little bit. And you know what? I just gotta tell you, you're not fooling anybody because licensing people have been through enough classrooms, at least I hope they have, that they can see that, like, right away. The thermostat director walks in. She sees the chaos and how everything has went sideways. And you know what she does or he does? They take one breath. They greet the licensing agent, person, representative warmly, like she was expected, walks the building at a normal pace, and her staff, who have watched her stay level headed 100 times before, keep doing exactly what they were doing, exactly what they were supposed to be doing. Same building, same morning, same sub in the toddler room, but two completely different inspection walkthroughs. The variable was the leader's nervous system. And here's the truth underneath all of this: your team doesn't follow your policies, they follow your example of how to be a person under pressure. Because this field is full of pressure. How are you teaching them to lead their classroom? We have CPR and compliance binders and trainings. And you know what? They get read and kind of skimmed through, but that's what you give them. You give them the tools they need every single day, whether you mean to or not, whether they're a thermostat or a thermometer. Number 4, losing on home soil. Ouch. First of all, some of the pressure that these players and goalkeepers are in blows my mind because when you're going to like sudden death and you have to be the one to make the last goal and pray that your goalkeeper back there is going to actually block that goal too. What insane pressure they must be under. Lesson number 4. This one is one this World Cup kind of handed us on a silver platter. Hence the lovely USA jersey that will be being retired for a minute because I'm mad at them. Um, but the 3 host nations, the USA, Mexico, and Canada, years of buildup, home crowds, all the pressure and all the hope, all the hype, all of it. And all 3 are out of the quarterfinals, eliminated in front of their own fans. Imagine those locker rooms. Imagine those coaches walking into a press conference that they have to do right after losing on their home soil. If you've been in this industry longer than 5 minutes, you have your own version of losing on your home soil. The licensing visit that went badly in your building, On your watch, the teacher developed for 3-year-olds who left for 50 cents more an hour. Teachers, 50 cents is not that much. It's like $20 a week, which I say is not that much, but it could like put a little bit in your gas tank, not fill it up. It does matter. But leaving for 50 cents an hour is more of a culture issue than a money issue. The family that bent over backwards and that you cared about so deeply and then trashed you on a Google review anyway. The enrollment dip that made you question whether you should even be doing this. Been there. The public failure in front of your staff, your families, your community. It's a different kind of pain because everybody saw it. So, what separates the program that can recover from one of those spirals? We've been there, we've spiraled hard. We've had the Facebook chatter and the people that you help and do things for. And honestly, it made me a little cold and hard for a minute because I was so hurt by some of those things. But you have to recover. First things first, the 24-hour rule. Elite teams allow themselves 24 hours to feel it. Feel all the feelings. Be angry, be gutted, vent to someone safe. And then the film room opens and the feelings close. You get to grieve the loss, but you don't get to live there. Directors, this applies to you. And it applies to how you lead your team through a rough patch. Acknowledge it honestly. Don't put fake positivity out there as your way past it or through it. Your staff knows that it's fake. And then move the film. Move your team past it. Own it and keep going. Second, review the tape, not the player. When World Cup teams debrief a loss, great coaches attack the performance, not the person. In your program, this could sound like our transition routine broke down. Instead of Miss Amanda dropped the ball on that transition routine today. The moment that your debriefs and staff meetings turn into blame sessions, people are going to stop telling you the truth. And a team that hides behind mistakes from the coach losses every time, that's going to be a very difficult situation to come back from. And if I'm being real, I have had these situations with licensing departments. Yep. I had a meeting with our licensing department at one point, and we were kind of raked over the coals for something. And it hurt because, you've devoted your life to this field. You're passionate about what you do. And it hurt. And in that meeting that I had with them, I told them, I came to you for help. If this is how we are treated when we come for help and we get raked over the coals, nobody is going to come to you anymore. And you know what? Since then, we've seen a lot of schools around us fail from this situation or that situation. And they didn't go to the licensing department for help. And it's really sad and unfortunate that that is the way that our industry is in some states right now. We cannot be that way. We cannot blame people. We have to just talk about the situation. Who wants to get thrown under a bus? No, they need help. They're not asking you to rake them over the coals for anything. Third, separate the result from the identity. Ooh, separate the result from the identity. The US losing doesn't mean American soccer is worthless. One bad licensing report does not mean that you're a bad director. And if we're all being honest, and we've been directors in the field, we've had a bad licensing report before. And it stings deep sometimes, but that does not reflect your identity. One brutal quarter in a soccer game doesn't mean that the whole team is failing. And one brutal licensing inspection doesn't mean that your program is failing. Honestly, it could just be that they decided to look at something different this time and they should have been doing it the last 5 times, but they didn't. So guess what? This time they're going to tell you you did it wrong. It happens. Results are data. They're not a verdict of who you are. They're information, tools that you can use to change what needs to happen, to make sure your team is informed and learning. But they are not the final verdict of who you are as a director, as a leader, as a person. And can I just say one more thing here? Some of you have been carrying a loss for months, maybe even years, replaying it and letting it shrink you. I know I have. Oof. I held on to it way, way, way too long. And you know what? The tournament moved on. The next match was already scheduled. The only question was, am I going to show up for it? Or am I going to keep focusing on the loss? Mm, If this hits a nerve, by the way, Katie and I built a whole session called the Burnout Blueprint. And it talks a lot about this stuff because I have been burnout to the core, as I'm sure many leaders in this field have been. So we'll talk more on the burnout blueprint another time. But I wanted to let you know that it is out there. Number 5, lesson number 5. The game is won at halftime. What? Here's something that casual fans often miss. The best coaches in the world aren't just great at prepping for a match. They're great at changing the match while it's happening. Ooh, let me say that again because it resonates not just with soccer, but in our everyday lives as leaders. The best coaches in the world, the best leaders in the world aren't just great at prepping for the match. They're not just great at showing you all the licensing regulations, however many you have. I know we have over 200. But they are great at changing the match while it's happening. Down a goal at halftime, the legends, they don't give the same speech louder. They change the shape. They swap the personnel. They adjust to what the game is actually giving them, not what they planned for. And I know y'all know that I'm from Indiana. So if you're from Indiana and hearing this, remember, you can change the shape. It's not exactly what we planned for, but we can change it and keep going. Meanwhile, we've got the stubborn coaches, and they're going to ride that game plan straight into elimination because admitting that the plan isn't working feels to them like they're admitting that they aren't working. Ooh, does that sound like anyone you know? Maybe somebody you see in the mirror sometimes? Childcare leaders do this constantly. We build the perfect staffing model in August, and we're so excited about the new school year and refuse to touch it in February. I am very well known for not liking to change a plan. But when it's clearly not working, is it worth it? We keep the tuition the same structure for 3 years because that's what we want to do, because raising rates kind of feels a little scary. What if people leave? Ooh. We keep running the same job ad that hasn't produced one single quality candidate in like a year. And then we blame, well, nobody wants to work anymore. Or we could just change the ad, change the plan, adapt. The plan is not sacred. The mission is sacred. The plan is just this season's strategy for serving it. So here's how you build halftime into your program. Schedule it. Real halftime adjustments don't happen by accident. There's whistles. Everybody walks off the field, and the coach looks at all the data. For you, that's a monthly hour, non negotiable on the calendar, where you look at your numbers like a coach looks at their match, enrollment, staff turnover, ratio pain points, family feedbacks, not just vibes and how things are feeling for the day, but actual true data. Then ask yourself two halftime questions. Question one: what did I believe at the start of this year that the evidence no longer supports? Question two: if I were hired today as a brand new director of this program, what is the first thing that I would change? The second question is so powerful because a new director has no ego invested in the old decisions. Be your own new hire. Look at it from a different perspective. And then this is the part that a lot of leaders skip: make the substitution. Insight without action is just expensive journaling. Change the schedule. Have the hard conversation, even when you want to cry after. You all know that just a few weeks ago, I had to have some hard conversations that I did not want to have. And I was definitely crying. I made the mood proof decision, but I still felt the emotion from it. And I gave myself 24 hours to feel all the feels. And then it was time to get back to the game plan, adjust it if I needed to. Kill the policy that isn't serving anybody in your school. Y'all heard me. Kill the policy that isn't helping anyone in your school. You know, we all have them. Maybe it was written 10 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it's just not relevant anymore. Man, I wish they would do this with licensing regulations sometimes. But that, again, another conversation. I should have like a Jessica Sidetracked series or something. Spring resignations happen. Losses happen. But when you take that time and you look at it with fresh perspective and the real actual data, not just your feelings, not your vibes, but the real data, you can make a real change for your school. The team's still playing this week in soccer. They've all had to make some adjustments. And you know what? The fans, most of them didn't even notice. That's the job. Make the adjustments. You guys are amazing. But I hope that you kind of get some of the scenarios that kind of take soccer and these legendary coaches that are on this field and they're under so much pressure. And you can relate that back to your schools and honestly look at how you're coaching your teams and your schools because you set the temperature. That's it for me for now, because I know I have talked your ear off today and I could go on and on, to be honest with you. But if today's episode lit a fire under you, the deeper work lives at childcareconfidential.podia.com. And that's where you're going to find things like the Childcare CEO mindset, which is basically this episode, but on steroids. Plus Speak Up and Lead, From Compliance to Confidence, the Burnout Blueprint. All of those trainings are right there for you. So reach out. We'll point you in the right direction. Feel free to contact us. If you want Katie and me to bring this energy to any of your conferences, retreats, or staff trainings, make sure to email us at info@childcareconfidential.com. We do travel a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed, I do love to travel. And we bring the real talk with us, the things that people are saying privately that need to be said out loud. Thank you so much for following us. Please like, subscribe, all of those good things. And I hope you enjoy the quarterfinals this week. Watch the coaches, not just the ball. And remember, whether it's a World Cup squad or a toddler room, the game is the same. Great teams aren't found. They're built, and you're the builder. I'm Jessica Hampton with Childcare Confidential. I will see you all next week. Thank you so much and have a wonderful week. I'll be watching those games.